Husbands, stop bleeding on your wives. What does that even mean? I had another conversation with a young man recently, met him for lunch. And as typical, these conversations I have with these young men, they've been married 5, 10, 15, sometimes even 20 years. And they want to meet me for lunch because they have a moral dilemma. And it's usually the same thing. They masturbated again. And so I met this guy, and we're at lunch, and he's a little embarrassed about broaching the topic. And so I just asked him, "Did you masturbate?" Anyway, the guy he confesses, and so I'm asking him, when was the last time you masturbated? He said, "Oh, it's been 6 months." I said, "So what'd you masturbate for?" And he said, "I don't know. I said, "So, oh, did you tell your wife?" And he said, "Yeah, that's one of the first things I did. I told my wife." I said, "Why would you tell your wife?" And like most guys, even the prisoners, they would say, "Because I had to get this off my chest. I was guilty. I was guilty. I had to get this off my chest. And I have to be honest with her. I have to keep it real. I don't want any secrets from my wife. All this baloney. I'll get to this in a second." And so I asked the guy, "So do you apologize to your wife and confess everything to her that you're guilty of?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "So every time you sin in your mind, I mean, how often do you lust after women?" And this guy, there were people around us at the food court, and this guy said, "Well, if I'm being honest, a lot." I said, "What does a lot mean?" Because I've had this conversation so many times. And he said, uh, every 5, 10 minutes. I said, "Okay, so every 5, 10 minutes, do you apologize to your wife? Do you confess to your wife that you just lust after another woman?" And he said, "Well, should I?" I'm like, "Don't be stupid." Don't be a moron. No, you're not supposed to confess to your wife. What would happen? Guys, husbands, you know this. What would happen if you, every time you thought of something lustful or sexual in your head, in your mind, in your imagination, and you went to your wife and confessed that to her? How's that going to work out for you? It's not. This is destruction. It's cancerous. Matter of fact, and if you apologize every time, your wife would probably look at you like, "Yeah, you can't be trusted. How many you've apologized to me for like the 1,000th time? You can't be trusted." So no, do not tell your wife everything. I told this young man, you say you apologized to her because you were guilty. You say you apologized to her because you had to clear your conscience. I said, you didn't apologize to your wife for her sake. You dumped on your wife. It's equivalent to vomiting on your wife. And I told him, this is why I'm putting this message out now. Husbands, stop bleeding on your wives. Your wives are not your accountability partner. She's not the one that's supposed to make you walk like a man. And only another man can bring that kind of affirmation, that kind of validation, that kind of, only a man is qualified to stare you down like a man and know the BS and call you out on your BS. Your wife can't do that. That's not her job. She's the weaker vessel. And so that's 1 Peter 3:7. You treat her as the weaker vessel, and then that's not her place. This is why you need a man in your life. You need a father in your life that you can talk to and be honest with, and you can bleed on another man, because a man, he'll know when you're full of it, and he can call you out on this. But as I was thinking about this, we've had prisoners who've gotten caught. When we were doing brig ministry, these prisoners would get caught, and every single one of them would come to the Bible studies and the sexual integrity classes, and every single man they'd come and they'd say, "I'm just being honest. I'm in front of all the prisoners. I'm just being honest. I am so relieved. Sure, I'm in trouble. My marriage is in jeopardy. My career is in jeopardy. But there's a part of me that's relieved that this secret is finally out." And now, and they said this every single time. The prisoners would say, "And so now that it's out, I told my wife everything." And he said, "Oh boy, I feel so good." And what I've learned over the years, over the almost 23 years of brig ministry and counseling, is that that's equivalent to bleeding on your wives. Abram did this to Sarah. I'll explain this in a second. But and I'll call these guys out. Why'd you apologize to her? Because the guy says, "I feel so good right now. Ooh, I've been carrying that for so long." And then what's the wife feeling like? The wife is wondering, "Who are you? I don't even know who you are." And the wife feels sick, and her world is upside down. It just got worse. Not only are you in confinement, but now you're telling her everything that she thought she's been living a lie. And so you vomited, you destroyed your wife at the expense of your own conscience. And so in Genesis 12, I was reading this. I was thinking, something's wrong with this. There's scripture to support this. And so I was messing around. I looked in Genesis 12, and Abraham, before he was called Abraham, he did the same thing with his wife. And he was traveling through Egypt, and there was a severe famine. Genesis 12, verses 10 through 13. And he said, okay, Sarai, as we go into this land, you're beautiful, you're gonna get a lot of attention, and so the men are probably going to kill me just to get to you. And so he says, tell these people that you are my sister, that it may go well with me because of you. And he goes on to say that I may live on account of you. That what he's doing, I read a lot of commentaries on this passage, and most of the commentaries agree that this was deceitful. He was lying. It was manipulative, even though she was his half sister type of thing. He said, but it was still deceitful. It's treacherous, and to put that on your wife. And but he goes on. He says, do this for me that I may live on account of you. And so basically, these husbands today, they're doing the same thing. They're cleansing their conscience. They're spilling their guts and vomiting on their wives, and the husband feels good, and now, ooh, I can live because I just vomited on you. This is not love. You're called in Ephesians 5:25, you're called to love your wives. That's not love. You're using her for your own conscience. And I ask these guys, why do you apologize to your wife? Is it because I'm guilty? No. Why do you apologize to your wife? And so it always comes down to, it was something I had to do. It was best for me without taking the wife's feelings into consideration. And so what you need to understand, this is a form of taking. You're taking from her. And there's a difference between taking and giving. Most men take. And so you're taking her soul, and you're basically just stomping on it and without realizing. But we think we're doing her a favor by being honest. And so I've heard somewhere, I read this, you make a life out of what you get, but you make a living out of what you get. You make a life out of what you give. Edwin Lewis Cole said this in his book Maximize Manhood years ago. I read it. Edwin Lewis Cole, Maximize Manhood, and he said that lust gets, love gives. And he went on to clarify. He says, lust gets at the expense of others. Love gives at the expense of self. This is what husbands are called to do. We're called to lay down our lives for our wives, right? Now, I'm not saying you're going to be perfect. I'm not saying that you're not going to lust or anything like that. But what I am telling you is that your wife does not need that kind of baggage. If you've got secrets, if you've got habits that you cannot break, those secret habits, you need to talk to another man who's gone before you, a man who's been where you're going. And they're out there. Stop being, cheesy about it and being too afraid to talk to other men about it. And so, do not be that husband that you clear your conscience and you dump on your wife for your own sake. Take into consideration what you're doing to her. This is love, and this is now. There may come a time when you can unload your secrets on your wife, but she's not your go-to. She is absolutely not your go-to. And I know a lot of you getting butthurt about this, thinking, well, that's my wife, that's my partner for life type of thing. Well, if she really is your partner for life, why are you doing this thing and committing adultery on her anyway, in your mind? Why are you doing this anyway? Don't give me that baloney. And so, stop dumping on your wives. Stop bleeding on your wives. There's other men out there who probably have dealt with the same thing, and you can talk to them. All right. And if you have questions, DM me. I'm sure I can help you walk through this thing. Now, love you guys. And always, bow down, fool.